Welcome back to Packs and Picks, and welcome to my first ever sealed deck build for the Altered TCG, their first expansion, Beyond the Gates. In the previous few videos on the channel, I opened up 7 packs for this sealed pool, and I went ahead and made a deck, and we're going to go over the deck that I came up with very soon. So in Altered, you, unlike other TCGs where you might open 6 packs, typically in Altered you actually open 7, and the deck building rules has you build a 30-card deck with using up to 3 of the factions of the 6 in the game. So you get to do a lot of kind of rule breaking with mixing the factions in Alter, which is pretty exciting. And you can use up to 3 of the factions. So I'll go ahead and start laying out the deck that I came up with here. We're going to use Sigismund Wingspan as our hero and companion for the deck. So this hero makes a 1/1/1 soldier token in our hero expedition every turn of the game, basically. And then I was also pulled into the Ordis faction, because of our one unique that we opened, Quetzalcoatl. So I felt like I kind of had to put that in the first deck. And actually, I think the deck that we ended up with is pretty cool too. So it wasn't just for putting in the unique. So I'll go ahead and lay this out here right now. It was definitely the Ordis faction and their ability with all their recruits that kind of drew me towards Ordis of one of the 3 factions. But there's also some other interesting things that we were able to pull out of some of the other factions that were on offer in the pool. Just kind of lay this out by mana and spells and non-spells. All right, so this is the bulk of the deck here. So yeah, as I mentioned, Ordis is all about those 1/1/1 soldier tokens, and there's a decent number of cards in the pool here that care about making 1/1/1 soldiers. So the first one we did get the Ordis permanent, the Ordis carrier. So this is going to make an Ordis recruit in our companion every turn. So this really pairs nicely with Sigismund Wingspan. So if we get this out on the board, we're getting 2 1/1/1s every turn. We also had, as I mentioned, our rare Quetzalcoatl. So this is giving us 2 Ordis recruits every time our opponent draws a card or does a resupply. Also from the reserve down here, can make a Ordis recruit. We've got the Paper Herald here, just a simple creature, simple character early on, but it can also discard from the reserve to make another soldier. And we just got a handful of 1/1/1s floating around. Up at the top end of the curve, we've got this spell here that makes 2 recruit tokens in each of our expeditions. So lots of 1/1/1s, lots of little creatures running around the board in Ordis. Now, typically it'd be nice to have like an anthem effect or a way to pump up all of our 1/1/1s at once, but we didn't have that in this version of the pool. So to kind of supplement that, I went with boost instead, and that came out of Bravos. So a handful of the Bravos cards in the pool are going to boost our other characters. So we got things like 2 copies of Physical Training. So Physical Training here, target character gains 3 boosts. And then we also got the faction shifted one in Muna. So we've got 2 copies of Physical Training. We've also got the Bravos permanent here, which gives all of our characters a reserve play ability to gain a boost. So things that come out of reserved are going to get a boost there. So that's my hope, at least, is making up for, with all of our small 1/1/1s, we can boost them with some boost and get them to punch through and win some of their expeditions. Another thing that drew me towards doing Bravos and Muna here is some mana ramp. So we also have a mana channeling here. So 2-cost spell, put the top card of your deck in your mana zone. So a little bit of ramp there. We've also got the Mighty Djinn over here. So when it leaves the expedition zone, I can put this in my mana zone. So a little bit of ramp. Granted, it's a little bit late because it's going from turn 4 to from 4 to 5 to 6. So a little bit slow on the ramp there, but it's ramp nonetheless. And then we also have a really interesting card in Mana Reaping, which I like the look of a lot. It's 3 cost, put target character or permanent in its owner's mana zone. So if our opponent is playing something that's particularly difficult to deal with, we can use this, trade off a little bit of ramp for them, but getting a removal spell out of it Or if we find like we're ahead or we're at parity, we could maybe target one of our smaller creatures, maybe something like the Paper Herald, and turn that into a resource for us and accelerate us into the late game. So alongside some of the ramp strategy, I do have a handful of higher cost things that I feel like are going to help us out. Up here we've got Grand Endeavor, so 6 cost Ortis permanent. Target expedition moves forward 1 region, so a more expensive permanent, but the idea is if we spend some of those early turns, early mana on ramping into something like this, we might be giving up some of our expedition progress, but we could make it back in the mid to late game with something like Grand Endeavor. Similarly, we've got a faction shifted Sakara Brew. So 7 costs, so really expensive, but we could ramp into this, and our opponent's expedition moves backwards. So we're trading some of that early expedition progress to make up for it with the Sakara Brew in the late game. At least that's the idea. We've also got some interesting cards because we've got a lot of 1/1s running around. We've got some sacrifice effects, so I really like Anubis in this deck. So each player sacrifices a character. This should hurt us less than our opponent because we've got all those token characters floating around. We've also got a Kuat the Dissenter, so a little bit above rate character that sacrifices a character when it comes into play, but if we're sacrificing a 1/1/1, we don't feel so bad about it, especially one that we got for free off of like a permanent or our Sigismar and Wingspan. And that's the deck right there. So I think the biggest contender for something that would replace one of the other factions was actually Izmir. And here's some of the Izmir cards that I could see a good argument for playing over either Bravos or Muna if we wanted to give up some of that ramp or some of the boost. So we get another Kuat in Izmir. We also get the Moonlight Jellyfish. This is a character that wants to be sacrificed, so it pairs really well with our sacrifice effects. We've got a Thoth, so this is a faction shifted rare in Izmir that makes more Ortis Recruit tokens, so it helps us with our token strategy. Also the Baba's Izba, we can sacrifice one of our tokens to have the after you effect, so we can turn one of those tokens into a little more time to make decisions on our turn. We also got 2 more Sakara Brews, so if we want to lean really heavily into that expedition progress manipulation strategy, we can do that. And then last, a card that I really wanted to try out, and we'll try out at some point in the format, is the Kraken. So when it comes into play, sacrifice 2 characters, and all regions become water, basically. So this one I feel like pairs really well with Ortis because we've got those recruit tokens. Just finding a way to really leverage that water imp effect would be really fun to play with over the life of the format. But that's the deck, and that's the pool, basically. Let me know your thoughts on this deck. Let me know what you like in the pool overall. I'm really looking forward to getting more exposure to these cards, playing with these cards more, and really starting to get a feel for each one's impact on the various terrain types in the game. I'm really focusing right now on just their effects and kind of the mana curve portion, but getting that familiarity where I know which cards are better in the mountains versus the forest versus the water is going to be fun to start to build decks around, especially as we look at cards like the Kraken. So that's it. Let me know your thoughts on the pool. Let me know your thoughts on Altered so far, and stick around because we got more pack openings and more sealed decks to come. I'll catch you soon.